Today we're going to get into clarifying shampoos. And if you're new here, I'm Emily. This is Wavy Hair Care, my YouTube channel, and I also have a blog called wavyhaircare.com. Clarifying is something that sometimes gets overlooked by people when they are transitioning to embracing their waves or starting the curly girl method, and it can cause a lot of problems if it's something that you are overlooking. So it's something that I think of as fairly important, even though it's not something we have to worry about a whole lot. It's just like a once a month kind of a thing in most cases. It's an important step to not leave out of your ongoing hair care routine. So to start with, what even is clarifying? Clarifying is doing a type of shampooing that is really intense. And the goal of using a clarifying shampoo or doing a clarifying wash is to remove any product residue, or in some cases we do chelating, which helps remove hard water deposits on hair. But it's basically a really deep clean for your hair that should be done periodically, because most shampoos, especially ones that are Curly Girl Method approved, are gentler, and so they remove a majority of what gets in your hair between washes, but doesn't remove everything, and so you can end up with product buildup accumulating if you only ever use more ordinary gentle shampoos and don't ever clarify. I occasionally get asked if reset shampoos and clarifying shampoos are the same thing, and basically yes, they are. It's a little more nuanced than that, but reset wash is a term that is used in the Curly Girl method, and the reset wash is doing a clarifying wash as your last or final wash before starting the Curly Girl method, and that is based on the idea that the Curly Girl method suggests that if you avoid using the ingredients that they don't think you should use, which is primarily silicones, you will then not ever get buildup, even if you're not using a sulfate containing shampoo. Or even the Curly Girl method also suggests co-washing, which is just using conditioner as a shampoo. The Curly Girl method handbook pushes the idea that you won't ever get buildup and you won't ever need to use a stronger shampoo as long as you are not using silicones. I personally don't really follow the Curly Girl method in terms of like what ingredients to use or not use, but most people, even who do generally say that they follow the Curly Girl method and generally believe in it and try to avoid silicones and things like that, will still do a clarifying wash about once a month, because they find that that claim that if you're not using silicones you just will never get buildup just doesn't seem to be how it really works. I think some of that might be that when the Curly Girl method was created, the available products were different than they are now, and so that makes things a little more complicated. When the Curly Girl method was created, they suggested not using sulfates because sulfates were seen as harsh shampoos and non-sulfate shampoos were seen as gentler ones. But according to like hair chemist podcasts and things that I've listened to, it's just no longer true that if a shampoo doesn't have a sulfate that it's gentle. We now have shampoos that are sulfate free but still really intense shampoos, and then there are also sulfate containing shampoos that are gentler than they used to be. And so it kind of makes that rule of sulfate or no sulfate telling you whether it's strong or not just doesn't really hold up anymore. But people who really strongly support the Curly Girl method would still follow that guideline that sulfates or not makes a huge difference in how strong a product is. And part of why I explain that is because another question that I get is there such a thing as a Curly Girl method approved clarifying shampoo? And initially, like way back when the Curly Girl method was created, the rule was that you don't need to clarify because you're not going to be getting buildup, because you're not using silicones, and so you can just always use very, very gentle cleansers and you won't ever get buildup, and so there's no need for clarifying shampoos. But now there is such a thing. There are sulfate-free shampoos, so that means they would technically be Curly Girl method approved, but they are considered to be clarifying shampoos because despite not having sulfate ingredients in them, they're still very strong. So they can get rid of buildup and things without using a sulfate if you still want to avoid sulfates. Most people that I see on forums and things like that do just use a sulfate containing clarifying wash. when they're clarifying, because there's just more sulfate containing clarifying shampoos than not, but there are definitely sulfate free clarifying shampoos out there if that is something that is important to you. I also wanted to circle back a little bit to chelating. So chelating is often talked about in the same space when we're talking about clarifying, because it's also an occasional thing that needs to be done to really get the hair really clean, but it is when you have hard water. A lot of times people think that they'll know if they have hard water or not based on whether they have city water or well water. And that is not the case. A lot of people have city water but still have hard water. The majority of people in the United States live in homes that have hard water. So you can look up your area or do water testing to find out for sure, but if you have issues like getting like white or almost bluish or greenish buildup around your shower head or around your faucet, then that is a sign that you have hard water, because that is minerals that build up around the water sources in your home. But I want to say it's something like 80% of households in the US have hard water. So if you just want to like make a random guess, you probably do have hard water unless you have a water softener. If you do have hard water, then some of the minerals that are in your water will get in your hair when you're showering. Some people actually buy bottled water that they use to shower their hair with, because that's one way to get around it. But I have hard water and I just use a chelating shampoo. And something that's a little tricky is that some chelating shampoos are strictly chelating and others are chelating and clarifying. I like to use Malibu's hard water shampoo, but according to the company, I reached out and actually asked them this, if it also removes product buildup or if it's just good for hard water. And they did say that it is just for hard water. So what I do is I still just have one day a month where I do like a really heavy deep clean of my hair, but I'll shampoo twice in that same shower. I'll use a regular clarifying shampoo and then I'll do a second shampoo immediately after with a chelating shampoo, or vice versa, just to make sure that I'm getting product buildup out of my hair and hard water buildup out of my hair. A lot of people wonder why it even matters to use a clarifying shampoo, because a lot of times they've spent large portions of their life never clarifying, and so it can seem like if I haven't needed to up till this point, why would I need to now? The answer to that is kind of twofold. So the most worrisome thing about buildup is that if it gets bad enough, it can impact the health of your hair. Buildup can essentially like clog your hair from the outside. Like your hair can get so coated in these, teeny tiny traces of product buildup or hard water buildup that water won't be able to effectively get inside of your hair strand. And if it's severe enough, that can cause your hair to get dehydrated from the inside out, and that can cause breakage or even hair loss. That would be in a really severe case, but even shy of that, it can just make your hair look less healthy and like behave worse or be harder to style. So if your hair has buildup on the outside, sometimes you can even feel it. It can get like sticky or kind of tacky feeling to the touch, but it also can make your hair less smooth, because instead of, being the shape of your natural hair strand, there's all these little bits and pieces of things you can't see, but that are kind of disrupting the smoothness of the exterior of your hair, and that can impact its ability to clump when you're styling your hair naturally wavy or curly. It can cause frizz because your hairs aren't going to want to align next to each other as well if there's kind of this tiny bit of like grit in between your hair strands. It can get to where your hair looks more dull. A lot of what makes us look at hair and think that it looks healthy is when it has a little bit of a natural shine to it. And for something to be shiny, kind of like if you think of a mirror, it has to be really smooth in order to reflect really well. And so if you have buildup on the outside of your hair, again, that hair strand isn't going to be as smooth on the exterior, and so it's not going to reflect light as well, and so it can kind of get dull looking or less shiny and just not look as healthy, look more dry, feel more rough, those kinds of things. Perhaps the most common question that I get about clarifying is how often to do it and how to know if you need to, like if it's time to clarify. And I generally recommend starting with about once a month. I feel like That's the most common frequency that I hear people reference. But then also to kind of try to listen to your hair. So if you find that you have your best hair day ever the day that you clarify each month, then that might be a sign that your hair is behaving really well right after clarifying because it really needed clarifying. And so then you might try once every 2 weeks, move it up to twice a month instead of once a month. And if you're still finding that every single time you clarify is just the best hair day ever, then maybe increase it even more. On the flip side, like, you can experiment with going longer in between. If you don't think that you need to as often, you can see how your hair behaves if you back off and only do it every 5 weeks, or just kind of experiment with what seems to work with you and how well your hair styles, how much frizz you have, any of those kinds of things, to see the impact that it's having on your specific hair. When I first learned about clarifying, I saw multiple pieces of content that said on the day that you clarify, it's really important to deep condition. And the reason that is usually listed for why that's important is because clarifying with a clarifying shampoo is really strong, it's really intense for your hair. And so it can kind of dry out your hair a little bit because it's so cleansing. And so for the first, year or better that I was doing this, I did always deep condition my hair afterwards. But then I usually found that made me have a not so great hair day after. So I found myself really thinking that clarifying was kind of making my hair worse. But what I wound up realizing was that it wasn't actually the clarifying that was making my hair behave a little worse. It was the fact that I was deep conditioning afterwards. My hair skews over moisturized really easily. It naturally stays pretty moisturized. And I was using a protein-free deep conditioner, so I was pushing my hair even more towards the moisturized side on those days that I was conditioning. And at some point when I started thinking that might be the case, I tried just clarifying and not following it up with a deep conditioner, and then I had a great hair day. And so for quite a while now, the vast majority of the time that I clarify my hair, I don't follow it up with a deep conditioner. I do think that clarifying is a little bit drying, but because my hair skews a little over moisturized, it's actually okay for my hair in particular to just let that happen and to not follow it up with extra moisture. But this can definitely depend on your individual hair type in terms of your porosity and your hair thickness and those kinds of things. So again, it's just kind of something you have to experiment a little bit. But I definitely don't think it's true that you absolutely must deep condition after you clarify, like a lot of sources out there will tell you. I don't do that, or if I do use a treatment afterwards, I usually use a protein treatment, which, protein treatments, at least the ones I use, have some moisture in them, but also have a lot of protein, and my hair does well with those. But if I use a just moisturizing deep conditioner, it tends to make my hair not do so great. Common signs that you need to clarify your hair. Most of these can also be signs of other things. So if you just have one of these, I wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I definitely need to clarify. But if you're seeing more than one, then it might be. But also, my experience with clarifying is that if you don't have really dry or really damaged hair, then clarifying one extra time, it's not going to make any really meaningful difference. And so when it really comes down to it, if I'm not sure if I need to clarify, but I think I might benefit from clarifying one more time in a given month, then I just do it. It's just not that deep. It's something I can try doing, and if I didn't need it, it doesn't hurt anything. That might be different, again, if you have really damaged, really dry hair, but otherwise, I would rather err on the side of making my hair cleaner than it needs to be than leaving it with more buildup. Okay, so signs that it's time to clarify your wavy hair. One is you're seeing more frizz than usual. And I know that's a frustrating one because frizz can be caused by so many things, but especially halo frizz can be a issue with buildup because a lot of times we get buildup closer to our roots, and so the hairs in that part of our head can really struggle to align themselves, and then if hairs break free from their curl clump, they're going to stick up more. If your hair has been feeling really heavy and weighed down regardless of what products you use. So generally if my hair feels heavy, I think, oh, I just used too much product or too heavy of products on that particular wash day. But if you find that you try using lighter products and your hair has just felt heavy for a few wash days and you can't really figure out why, that can be because of product buildup. If your hair feels dirty right after you shampooed it, or if that dirtiness even feels like greasy or waxy or tacky, this one I would say is a pretty clear sign that it's definitely a need to clarify. I had this is how I actually discovered that I needed to clarify for the first time, is I was Googling things like, why does my hair feel waxy? And it was just in one part of my head, it wasn't all over. And so that's something to keep in mind too, is you can get particularly bad buildup in certain areas of your head. It's not necessarily going to be equal all over. But mine was like right here, kind of like right at the crown of my head. And I would shampoo and it would just feel like there was something coating my hair, and it was like I had not rinsed my conditioner out fully or something like that. I just could not figure out what that was, and it got bad enough that like one day I took like 3 showers in a row because I was just like, why is my hair not getting clean? I was using so much shampoo and it just wasn't working. And then, you know, thankfully Google led me to the answer that I needed a clarifying shampoo, because the regular shampoo I was using, even though I was using it repeatedly, just wasn't doing the job. And yeah, that was a really gross experience, but I just didn't know that I should be clarifying my hair after starting the Curly Girl method or starting to use other products. And by other products, I mean I had started using gel and mousse when I started embracing my waves. I hadn't used products like that previously, and so those increase your odds of getting buildup and needing to clarify. So if you do experience that, like my hair just feels dirty or looks dirty, feels greasy, looks greasy, even if I've just washed it and it just dried, that's a pretty solid sign that clarifying is going to help you out a lot. If your hair seems to not really want to absorb products and you feel like products are just sitting on top of your hair instead, this can happen because you are getting that clogged experience of your hair. There's so much buildup on the outside of the strand that water or leave-in conditioner, gel, whatever it might be, isn't really wanting to get in your hair, and it's just sitting right on top. And this is a little bit of a tricky one because low porosity hair also has a hard time absorbing product. But if you have low porosity hair, then your hair would have just always behaved that way. Where if this is the result of buildup, then it would be something that you didn't always experience, but that you notice starting to happen or notice getting worse as your hair gets more buildup on it. I've even come across people saying like that they thought they had low porosity hair because they've never clarified their hair, but it always had a hard time absorbing products. And then once they clarified their hair for the first time, they learned actually my hair can absorb products. It just wasn't because it was so coated in products without them realizing it. If your scalp is itchy, sometimes that can be caused by buildup. Obviously, there's lots of other things that can cause an irritated or itchy, sensitive scalp, but sometimes when we get buildup in our hair, especially close to our roots, that can just irritate our skin and cause itchiness. If your hair in the fairly recent past was shiny and now it looks really dull, that can be a sign that your hair is coated with some buildup and that it's time to clarify. And last but not least, if it's just been over a month since you've clarified, then it's a reasonable thing to just try to clarify it and see if your hair looks better, feels better, behaves better. And lastly, I wanted to go over some factors that can contribute to how often you might need to clarify, because part of what can make it vary for people depends on your hair routine. So if you use oils, that's definitely going to make you need to clarify your hair more. The function of hair oils is to seal your hair so that humidity doesn't get into your hair and so that you don't lose the benefits of your gel or leave-in conditioner or whatever you've put under your gel. And so that's its job, is to coat your hair. But if you are using oil, it is going to coat your hair and that's going to build up. And so oil use definitely can contribute to how often you need to clarify. And that's not just like literally using hair oils like jojoba oil or something like that, but also using conditioners or other products that have oils or butters in them. Those are also designed to help seal the hair, and those will require stronger shampoos and clarifying shampoos to help remove those heavier products. If your individual hair strands are fine, you'll need to clarify more often than somebody has thicker or coarser individual hair strands. And it's important to keep in mind that how fine or thick your individual hair strands are isn't the same thing as whether your hair looks thick. If you have fine hair but you have a lot of hairs, your hair can look thick but be fine. I hope that makes sense. I'm somebody who has dense hair in terms of I have a lot of hair, but my individual hair strands are fine. I'm more prone to buildup because of that. If your hair is lower porosity, you will need to clarify more often than somebody who has higher porosity hair. So hair porosity is essentially how porous or how many like holes your individual hair strands have. And so with low porosity hair, the cuticles are really tight and kind of create a good natural seal, which is really great for helping our hair stay healthier and moisturized, in that once water gets into our hair, it stays really locked in. And so our hair isn't going to get very dried out between washes as long as we got it really nice and hydrated on wash day. But the downside of that is it is harder for water to get in there to begin with, or for products to get in there to begin with. And so that means it's easier for your hair to get overwhelmed by the products you're using and for those products to build up. Using shampoo bars is getting more and more common, and shampoo bars are associated with buildup because in order for a shampoo bar to be formed, they have to include waxes. At least that's my understanding, is that all shampoo bars have waxes in them. That is what makes them into the shape of a shampoo bar. And waxes are a thick and coating substance that when it goes onto your hair can coat your hair and will need to be removed with a clarifying shampoo. I'll throw in here that according to the Curly Girl method, if you use silicones, you will need to clarify more often. I think this is kind of a controversial one because this statement isn't really backed up by research in the Curly Girl Method Handbook. The Curly Girl Handbook doesn't actually list any sources, any research in the entire book, which is something I like to point out a lot, that I don't think people realize that it's not a science-based practice. But a lot of people have found it to be true in their like anecdotal experience, and if they do choose to use a silicone for some special case use, they want to clarify immediately after. And that's just personal choice. I personally have not found that on the days that I use silicones, or even if I use silicones for like a whole week, that I notice any more buildup than on days where I don't. So I think I personally don't really subscribe to that idea that silicones definitely cause more buildup than non-silicone containing products, but that's what the Curly Girl method suggests, so that's something for you to consider and make up your own mind on. And last but not least is how gentle your regular cleanser is. So the more gentle your daily or, regular use shampoo is, I guess most of us don't shampoo our hair every day, but every 2 or 3 days. If you're using an extremely gentle cleanser, for example, using a co-wash, like using conditioner to wash your scalp rather than a product that has any sort of cleanser in it at all, then you're likely to get more buildup, because the gentler your cleanser is, the less clean your hair is getting on those days that you use that gentle cleanser. And that's a little bit of a trade-off, is that the gentler you go on regular wash days, the more likely you are to have buildup, so then you might have to clarify more often. And so if your goal is to be as gentle on your hair as possible, I guess the goal would be to find some sweet spot as far as how gentle can you go with your regular cleanser without it then causing you to need to clarify all the time to make sure your hair isn't getting problems from buildup or then just getting dried out from over clarifying, So that's a tricky one. I personally am pretty happy with some like gentler sulfate shampoos, but I have never felt very good about the co-washes or conditioner washes that I have used. But it's a little hard to say, because some of that might just be from bias of feeling like if it's not sudsing, then it doesn't feel clean. It might be sort of a placebo effect, or that's not really the right word, like a personal bias or something that's just in my head, But that's definitely something to consider, is if you are feeling like you have to clarify a lot because you're getting buildup really regularly, maybe using a slightly stronger shampoo on your regular wash days could reduce how often you are clarifying. If you want a recommendation for a really cheap, really accessible clarifying shampoo, I absolutely love the Suave Daily Clarifying shampoo. It's blue. It's comes in a huge bottle for about $2 at like stores like Walmart and Target, but it's also at like drugstores and stuff like that. Most places in the US will have it. Super affordable. I think it's crazy that they call it a daily clarifying shampoo. I cannot imagine anybody using it every day. It's definitely a pretty strong shampoo, but I use it about once a month, and I've used it ever since I learned about clarifying, I don't know, 5 years ago, or maybe even longer ago than that. And I just think it's amazing for the price. I love how accessible it is. I don't really see any reason to use anything other than that. And then for chelating, for hard water, I like the Malibu hard water shampoo. It is more pricey, but because I do only use it once a month, it lasts forever. And I haven't used it personally, but the other popular chelating shampoo that I've heard other people really love is called Ion Hard Water Shampoo, that is available through Sally Beauty. Chelating shampoos seem a little bit trickier to find. I have some content on my blog about chelating and clarifying that go into even more detail, and so I'll link those in the description box. Let me know what works for you guys as far as how often you clarify, what you clarify with, how you balance, how gentle you are with your routine cleanser versus how often you clarify, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.